Now a look at the arts. The long-awaited opening of San Francisco's new Asian Art Museum is fast approaching, and we have a preview of what's in store. First, producer John Roszak takes us on a visual tour, and then we'll talk with arts writer Sarah Wood about the museum's relationship to the community.
The new Asian Art Museum is housed in the old main library in the Civic Center. The grand staircase remains, but little else. In a space that once housed the written word, there are now galleries and spaces showing the hidden treasures of a collection many have heard about, but few people have ever seen. The new museum cost more than $160 million, and it houses an art collection that's been valued at between $3 and $5 billion. The museum came into being when the late industrialist and longtime Olympic Games chairman Avery Brundage gave 7,000 objects from his legendary collection to the city of San Francisco. For 35 years, the museum was located in Golden Gate Park in a building adjacent to the old DeYoung Museum. But only a fraction of the collection could be shown there. The new museum has double the amount of exhibition space. Some will miss the park's greenery, but by moving into the heart of the city, the Asian has gained a vibrancy and an immediacy that should draw in new audiences and boost its attendance. And what they'll see when they get there are breathtaking installations, specially designed for works that are so delicate and fragile that too much light can damage them. The walls are bathed in a soft glow which makes the lights on the individual pieces less harsh. The result is a palette of colors that is stunning and quite indescribable.
So, Sarah Wood, what does this mean for the community?
This is a glittering jewel for San Francisco and the Bay Area. After all, San Francisco is the gateway to the Far East and the Pacific Rim, so it's very fitting that this museum is here. And in its new location in the Civic Center, it's right in the middle of one of the most lively cultural corridors in the city, next to Davies Hall, or a few blocks from Davies Hall, Opera on the other side. The collection is, as John mentioned, it's a $4 billion collection. There are over 15,000 objects in it. Now, 2,500 will be on view at any one time now in this larger space. Twice as much as they were before. This is the largest institution devoted exclusively to Asian art in the country. And the feeling is, with the cachet of a world-class architect, Valenti, who designed the museum, who helped transform the museum, Musée d'Orsay in Paris, and who's come here to work on this museum and this collection, they are expecting something like 400,000 visitors in this first year. After that, we'll have to see. After the publicity blitz dies down, we'll have to wait and see what happens. The space is really quite spectacular. And it's much brighter and more open than the space in Golden Gate Park. You can see the art better.
Speaking of, sir, this was an old library, and they've converted it into this museum. That must have been difficult. Does it work? Does it still feel like a don't talk place, or does it feel like a museum now?
Well, you bring up a really important point, because one of the real challenges facing Olenti was taking a space that is about, meditation and quiet reflection, and turning it into a space that's about moving and looking outward. And I think they've done quite well there. The grand staircase and hall and the loggia, the central staircase and grand hall and loggia have been beautifully restored. I was in there for a party the other night and saw it all lit up, and it's quite beautiful. And then you're kind of whisked into this very modern, light-filled, expansive area with banked skylights, glass-enclosed escalators, and an outdoor cafe, which really opens it up, gives you a new sense of its relationship to the city. And I want to stress, too, one of the really important things here is that the museum is now close to public transportation. It was much less accessible in Golden Gate Park, so it'll make it easier for people to come.
Sarah, at the old Asian, there was a certain intensity to it because the exhibits were packed so tightly together. I get a sense that the New Asian, it breathes better, and in turn, the experience will be different for people who are going from one exhibit to another.
Well, it's interesting because I've seen the building at several different stages during the construction, and the other night is the first time I've seen it with people in it. And there really is this openness and, as you put it, ability to move and really see things clearly. You know, ultimately, it's going to be about how people inhabit this space. You know, the critics can speculate, you know, and criticize the architecture, but ultimately is how do people, who's going to use the museum and how are they going to move through it?
I wanted to ask about that. How do you keep the momentum going? We saw with the Museum of Modern Art, it had huge crowds when it first opened, and now they're struggling as well with money. You said $400,000 the first year, but what do they have to do? Does it have to be incredible new exhibits that will come in year after year, or is it just going to be something that's a basis for San Francisco culture and people will just keep coming? What are they looking for?
Well, I think it will be a destination for residents, tourists, and scholars alike. There were a great number of pieces that they weren't able to show that were in storage at the old museum that they've now been able to put out. So I think people will be surprised at the depth and range of this collection. The curators have had a chance to basically redesign from the ground up how the museum is laid out. And as an organizing principle, they've chosen, at least for the moment, the trail of Buddhism. Later, they may go to local beliefs and practices and trade. I did speak to the chief curator of the museum about this very issue, and they're keenly aware of this fall-off problem after the publicity dies down. And they're holding off doing any very large, high-profile exhibits for at least another year or two. They're keeping those in reserve. One of the really nice features of this museum is it has a special dedicated exhibition space. In the old space, they had to take down the permanent collection and put it aside when a traveling show came through. Now they don't have to do that. They're also going to be having live performances and demonstrations in the Grand Hall, so they're hoping that will attract people as well.
Will they bring back the New Year's bell ringing? Because I've missed that the past few years.
That I don't know about. We're going to have to look ahead and see.
What about the neighborhood? We talked a little bit about it, but it is a troubled neighborhood, and you mentioned an outdoor cafe. How can they do it there?
Well,
How have they done it?
You know, the most striking things I noticed when I first saw the building is that you could see City Hall. It's just in whistling distance of City Hall, and suddenly there were windows looking out on this plaza. As you know, recently in the news, there was a story about the homeless bathing in the United Nations fountain, which they fenced off. And it is, people are very much on hard times around there. And I guess there's a question about whether the neighborhood is going to kind of rise to the occasion. I think that is also yet to be seen.
Mm-hmm. When does it officially open?
It opens officially March 20th. It'll actually be open late that day. I think there are going to be a lot of people at the museum that first